You've got to understand that back in the Bible days when they built cities, all of the cities were built with a wall to encompass about it. The walls were built to fortify and as protection to protect the people of God, to protect the citizens that were on the inside of the city. Their job was that not only was it to be able to stop the people from coming in and to stop the people from going out, but it was also built wide enough that there were men that would walk on the top of the wall, and their job was to watch. Their job was to look and to make sure that the enemy was not able to sneak up on them. This is why the walls were built high enough so not only could, as in other words, it be protection, but so that it could also be a way to look out for the enemy before the enemy could even get to you and even sneak up on you. Look at your neighbor and say, you gotta watch. So the Bible declares that we find that this is after the time in Nehemiah where we find that they had been taken into captivity, and we find that the word of the Lord tells us that Nehemiah asked of what has happened to those that were not taken captive, and word comes back that they're under great affliction because the walls have been broken down and the gate has been burnt. Now I told you they built the walls, but there was only one gate. Maybe there was different gates, but the gate was the only way that you can get in and you can get out. And you've got to understand now that without the walls and without the gate, we then become open for the enemy to come in and to do whatever it is that he desires and pleases to do in our lives. Look at your neighbor and say, there's an enemy at the gate. Well, tonight I want to talk about 7 nations. I want to talk about 7 spirits that we must watch for, that are sitting on the outside of the gate and are ready to come in. Let me give you a little bit of historical background. If we can remember when the Lord spoke to the children of Israel when they were in captivity in Egypt, and he told Moses to bring them out, and when Moses was bringing them out, he told them about the promised land. But you've got to understand that they could not go into the promised land because there were 7 nations that were in the land that God had to drive out before they could get there to get what it is that God had for them. And you've got to understand that the 7 nations were the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, and the Jebusites. You've got to understand now, God said, I set up this place, this promised land to bring you into. He said, but there are distractions there. There are things there that I do not like, so I can't bring you into the promise until I get rid of the things that has no business being there. Look at him and say, there's an enemy, there's an enemy, there's an enemy. So you've got to understand that as I begin to look at this, the Lord said, now that I sent word to Moses, and what was just supposed to be a 40-day journey, what was just supposed to be a quick little jump through the wilderness, turned into 40 years. Why did it turn into 40 years? It turned into 40 years because the Bible declares that the Lord sent the word to Moses and said, go possess the land. It's right there. Go into it. And when he sent in the spies, they came back. 10 said, well, you know what? We can't take it. They're mightier than us. They're bigger than us. But Joshua and Caleb said, look, let's go on anyways. Our God is mighty. Our God is great. He's able to allow us to be able to take this land. And the Bible declares, they said, no, we're fine just where we at. Look at you, they said, we're parking in a no parking zone. Sometimes when God parks us in the wilderness, he sticks us in a spot while he is preparing us to take us to our next level. And we have a tendency to get lazy and complacent and like where God has placed us. Now, you got to understand there are 7 spirits, 7 nations that I want to deal with. And I'm going to go one by one. And the first one that I want to deal with is that is sitting at the gate. and that is ready to come in is that of the Hittites. Look at your neighbor and say, the Hittites. The Hittites are connected with the spirit of fear that affects the body. They are descendants of Heth, whose name means terror, fear, and self-mutilation. You've got to understand, standing at the gate is the spirit of the Hittites. It's a spirit of fear that comes upon us to cause you to do harm to your body. It causes effects to come upon your body. Now you've got to understand, this is why we need to make sure that our walls are sturdy and built up, and we must keep our gate locked and not allow any and everything to enter in our spirit. This is why when you see people who get knives and stuff and they carve their names into their arms and they do harm to their body, this is a spirit of the Hittite. Because it comes to cause a horrible fear to come on their life. It's a spirit of terror. And I don't know about you, but I've dealt with a spirit of terror, and it's a terrible thing to have to deal with, because its job is to work at your mind and to destroy you and to keep you where you will not go after the things that God has called you to do. Second one I want to deal with is that of the Girgashites. The spirit of the Girgashites. They represent the spirit of divination. The name Girgashites mean clay dwellers or camouflagers. Divination gives the hearer the hopes and dreams that they want to hear. This is why we must be careful when we're operating in the spirit realm, what spirit you're operating in. It is so easy to get confused and crossed up and think that you are operating in the spirit of God, when in actuality you're operating in the spirit of divination. Psychics come under the spirit of divination. Palm readers come under the spirit of divination. Astrology. I have never seen such a time where we have saints who get the newspaper and is reading the astrology section. Do you not know when you're sitting there and you are reading that stuff, you are opening your spirit up to a spirit of divination to come? Look at your neighbor and say, there's an enemy, there's an enemy. At the gate, at the gate, at the gate. You got to watch, you got to watch, you got to watch. So you've got to understand. You ever seen people that every single time you turn around, they just superstitious. They just think they just. I got to see what the stars say. I got to call Madam Hoorah and see what my horoscope is. I don't need to know my horoscope. All I need to know is that if I live right, heaven belongs to me. Can I preach like I want? What spirit I want to deal with is that of the Amorites. They represent the spirit of livelihood through moral compromise. They are the descendants of Shem, who was the son of Noah, whose name means self-boasters, highlanders, manipulators, or grave dwellers. The Amorites represent the spirit of Antichrist, or the spirit that is equal with God. This is the kingdom of abortion, cannibalism, tyrants, blasphemers, patricide, matricide, and pestilence, and every foul belief that seeks to raise itself above the interest of anyone else at any cost. This spirit sneaks up in our lives, and it causes us to get whatever we must do to get anything to boast me and to make me look good and to make me get to where I need to get. I don't care who I got to hurt. I don't care who I got to knock. Now, anybody here anybody like that? They don't care if they hurt your feelings. They don't care if they cut your throat. But I got to get to where I've got to get. Manipulators. I'll manipulate your mind and I'll use you to get to where I've got to get. All right. All right. Spirit of Amorites. Look at your neighbor, say there's an enemy at the gate. Also up under this, I saw two words, patricide and matricide. So I went in the computer and went in the dictionary, and I said, now this falls up under this, and I said, well, what in the world does these two words mean? Patricide means killing your father. When you murder your father. Matricide is when you murder your mother. It comes under this spirit. If I